that time. So as I thought about that, I thought, well, what mechanism do we have for the community to interact with their elected board members? And there wasn't really that thing. So then we started doing these kind of what I'm calling constituency meetings, probably a better word for it. But so anyway, it's kind of intended to be an open dialogue. Whatever you want to talk about, whatever questions you have or anything like that, that's kind of what we're here for.
I did think of one, what additional resources have become a necessity because of the influx of students that English is not their primary language?
Yeah, we've had to add some English language learning support staff. So a couple of teachers as well as classroom aides that are working with those students. And there's different testing and assessment systems that we use to figure out, are they brand new, no zero English, or are they okay functional English, or do they have kind of an academic command of English? And so the levels of support that we provide are kind of based on what we learn about the students in terms of their command of English, whether they learn English at home and that sort of thing. So it's an interesting question, thank you. But we've definitely had to add some supports in over the last couple of years to support the influx of non-English speaking students.
Are we trying to, just for minimizing cost impact, send them all to one school, or they scattered around at their home schools, and so now you have these resources where, you know, there's 2 students here, 5 students here, where maybe you'd have a class of 25 at one place if they all went?
We don't have that many students yet.
Okay.
So the way we're doing it right now is we have traveling staff that go from building to building to where the students are. We don't have, transportation becomes an issue if we were to try to get everyone from our 970 square miles and try to get them to one school. It's a little bit easier for us to let them go to their neighborhood schools and have staff travel to where they are.
Okay.
If our numbers continue to increase, we may have to look at that differently. But right now, our numbers are such that we have a small number of staff, 1 full-time teacher, and I think we're up to 3 aides now that can kind of travel around and help support the teachers and then do some specific support work with the students.
I heard there was a bunch of Mill Hall Elementary, that's why I asked.
Yep, it's a lot of folks that, Mill Hall is a pretty good catchment area.
Yeah.
So a lot of them do it with their.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's, I feel for the classroom teacher. I mean, you're speaking to students who don't have a clue of what you're saying or you know, minimal understanding, and you can only do so much.
Yeah, and that's why we want to get that support in to help them so that they do have those tools to support the kids in class.
Is there a strong Spanish department at the high school that even some of the ones who teach Spanish there can actually be used to help? Because I would assume it's primarily Spanish, although there's all different.
It's actually we're getting a bigger influx of Haitian Creole speakers.
Oh, okay.
And that's a little more difficult to find translators for. But our Spanish teachers have full-time jobs being Spanish teachers, so it's not hard to support. Although we do sometimes get help with translation, some documents and stuff like that we ask them to help out with.
Okay. Have you looked at like maybe at Penn State for any resources, any, you know?
Yeah, we're constantly on the search for, and there's some technology solutions that are getting better to help with that in-the-moment translation. And then the state organizations that support the school board or support superintendents both have a lot of resources that can help direct us towards some of the support networks for how do we help when there's this kind of influx of non-English speakers.
Do you find that the area employers who are employing the parents are receptive to like having ESL classes in the evening or something so that the parents are also learning English?
Yeah, I love that idea. We haven't explored that yet. I've thought of that a few times. We haven't really kind of jumped into that yet. But I love the idea.
Yeah, because I think it's would help immensely.
Sure. Yeah.
so that when the students go home, the English can be continued. Yeah. Oh, Chris, isn't Nicholas, the meatpacking, a large employer of, yeah, and so what is Nicholas doing for their employees? Do you have any idea?
I have no clue what he's doing there. I don't know that all the kids that are there are from Nicholas. I'm sure there's a bunch, but I have no clue because that's kind of just off on another page
Yeah,
that we don't know about.
yeah. Okay. I wonder if the charter school is facing the same, the same.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. Hey there. Well, it's all right.
Hello. My name is Frank Redmond. I'm the superintendent, and I'm sure you know Chris.
You don't, Mike.
Brandon.
You don't, Brandon.
Nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Sure.
Sherry?
Sharon.
Sharon. Yeah, that's my wife. Ma'am?
I'm Dawn Miller.
Okay, nice to meet you all. So we were just kind of talking about some issues around students who are coming in who don't speak English at home or are new to the country. So there's no agenda for tonight. The point of having a meeting is so that you all have access to your elected representative on the school board and me in a way that's different than in board meetings. Board meetings are fairly limited. There's a time for folks to speak about whatever they want, but it's not a time to interact with the board. So I thought it would be maybe useful and nice to have you all have access to your board member
They all got access to me. Everybody.
fairly directly and you know,
I
to
know where
have,
you live.
Yeah.
and have both of us around to sort of talk about whatever you want to talk about in terms of the school district. So it's just kind of open forum and talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Why did they close down the tax office, the central tax office? Why was that?
I don't know if there's a real easy direct answer for that. So trying to, how can I capture this? There's a few reasons for it. So the cost that the municipalities and the school districts were paying in order to keep that running was higher than could be achieved if that tax collection function were outsourced to someone else, to another company. There are a few things structurally from either software or other security measures that we weren't able to offer because we were such a small organization in terms of a tax collection service that there would be vastly greater efficiencies if they were to offer it elsewhere. There's a whole bunch of other reasons for that, and I'm sorry I didn't come prepared with all of our reasoning for it, but largely it comes down to a more efficient version of tax collection, not just for the school district, but for all of the more than 20 municipalities who are using the school district as their tax collector. We have to charge more overhead because we're fairly small than a larger organization is able to do. There's this idea of economy of scale for, there's 3 or 4, I think 3 that we looked at, fairly big tax collection services that could operate and provide the same services for a fraction of the cost of what we're able to do. So that's both in terms of providing a smaller charge for all the municipalities for on a percentage basis for what they're collecting, but also a better service to both the municipalities and the citizens who are paying the taxes. And we're talking specifically about earned income tax. That's the service that we were primarily providing through our tax collection service to the TCC.
So where are we going to go when we go to pay our Keystone Central taxes?
You can still come to our office. We will still be collecting property taxes through our tax collection service. So property tax, well, let me back up a little bit. It's a board decision in terms of how all of this is going to play out. The board hasn't gone through that conversation yet. The recommendation from the administration is that the Keystone Central School District retains the property tax collection service. Because we're more efficient, we can provide the services to local individuals to come in and pay their local taxes, their property taxes at the school district.
Anybody else? I want to monopolize this time.
My daughter had an incident there a couple of years ago. It'll be 2 years in March. She was the one that was attacked in the bathroom.
Oh, sorry.
I'm curious to know what's changed. I was supposed to have a meeting before she came back to school with Mr. Rowley and Miss Martin, but I only got to meet with Mr. Rowley.
Okay.
And he couldn't answer very many questions. So I'm curious. She's gonna be a senior next year. She really wants to come back.
Okay. I wasn't here a couple of years ago, so I don't know exactly what's different. What I see in the classroom, or in the hallways right now, is we have hallway monitors, so there's a teacher that's always in every hallway, and they're typically sitting kind of right across the hallway from the openings to the bathrooms. I'm hearing from the students, student government, but also other student groups that I talk to, that things are much better than they were. That doesn't mean that there are never any issues, but things are much better, much safer, and people are more comfortable now than they were, as you're mentioning, a couple of years ago when it was pretty significant. There's some systems that have been put in place. So there's an electronic hall pass system, so that students who want to go to the restroom or whatever have to do this electronic hall pass thing, so we can monitor who's out and in the hallways and moving around at any particular time. Okay. So I know those are some of the more recent developments. I'm sorry, I can't be more detailed than that because I'm not sure what was different 2 years ago from what I'm seeing now.
Well, there was like no teachers anywhere to be found. The fight went on for minutes. Like, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, like there's teachers out in the hallway. If they're passing period during classes, part of their extra duty is to be in the hallways.
What about punishments? My question then was, and I still have the same question, what happened to detention? I know you weren't there.
Yeah, so I know right now, part of our struggle with detention is around transportation. So if a student is held after school on detention, there's no way to get them home. And for some of our parents, they don't have any way to come and get the kids unless they ride a bus.
Shouldn't that promote the kids to be better in school, perhaps?
It should.
I mean, that's what it was when we were in school.
But it also creates the problem of, at the end of detention, we don't have anybody to hang out with the kid until the parent figures out some way of getting the kids home. So rather than it end up being a burden on the parents, it ends up being a burden on the school, because they just say, we can't, they're yours now because we can't come and get them.
The times have changed.
Yes.
When I missed the bus, or for whatever reason, I had 2 feet. I know where I live. Get your ass home.
I don't know. I just think
Or
if there's
just-
more pressure on the parents, there would be more pressure on the kids to behave in school, and this stuff just wouldn't happen at all. Instead of lunch detentions, which most of the kids find fun.
I hear you. And it's definitely true that the times have changed, and that burden of supporting students who are misbehaving has definitely shifted from parents being supportive and coming to get their kids and yelling at them because they did something wrong. It's a very different world now. And unfortunately, it's a bit out of my control. I would love to be able to say, I'd love to have the parents be on our side when we have evidence and it says, we know that these students engaged in stuff that's outside of our handbook and there's some consequences that go along with it. And it's more often the case that we get pushback from the parents and say, no, it didn't happen. My kid says it didn't happen. That's not, a lot of other things that make it more difficult for us to hold kids accountable in the same way than was true certainly when I was in school and my kids were in school.
I just don't understand what changed. Besides the parents, which was us, essentially.
And I don't want to suggest that it's universal and every parent is not being supportive, because we have some very, very supportive parents, but we also have some that are not very supportive.
I got on the school board because of what happened with your daughter. And I will do anything in my power to make sure that never happens again.
She still suffers because of it in so many different ways.
I know
And actually, I do have another question. The girl that was involved in that incident, I come to find out later, should have been, I'm trying to word this without giving too much away. She should have been somewhere she wouldn't have been able to be out of. She was in a room where kids were not supposed to be coming out of the room.
Mhm.
She was out of that room though.
Okay.
Is that, like, is that just a one-time thing, or do them?
It's a little hard to answer, so to the extent possible, we try to make sure students are where they're supposed to be. And again, that electronic hall pass helps with that.
That hall monitoring seems to be working.
That's my,
How does it work if somebody's in the hall that's not supposed to be? How does,
Well, if, say like you and I are having a problem and we've been in trouble over it, they won't let me out of the classroom if if you're going to the
At the same
bathroom,
time.
they won't let me out. If I go to get out and use the hall pass, it'll automatically signify that, well, we would be in there together and not allowed to be, so it won't let me
that's
out.
automated, or is that something that somebody's checking and approving these things? Is that what
It's automated.
Okay. That's pretty good then, yeah.
so you guys go in and change things when you realize different groups are having different issues then?
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's part of the administration works on, we know that, Chris and I don't get along. So we're gonna make sure that there's a block in the system so that Frank and Chris can't have a hall pass.
That's good.
Right.
Makes sense.
No system is perfect, but we're trying.
Yeah.
Hey, that's all I
Better
asked.
than absolutely nothing, so.
I wasn't getting no answers, I know the school can only say so much as far as about the other party, but there was just so many open questions.
So I also want to question, there was a 2-day retreat for 15 staff members that cost the taxpayers $16,000. Why is that?
So
What
there's,
is a what,
It was local too, wasn't it?
yeah, like,
Like within driving.
I could have drove there in 30 minutes or less than. Well, why was it an overnight thing?
It's a weekend thing, I believe.
no, it wasn't.
I-
It
Oh,
was
was
during the week.
I don't know all the
I
particulars,
don't
but
know.
I heard some.
So it was paid for by Title II. So there's some federal funding that we get that, in this case, Title II is specifically designated to support professional learning. So that money was used for the entirety of this retreat that we did. Me being new and Dr. Zangara being new, there's a lot of team building that we needed to do, and there's actually a lot of professional development literature that shows that taking people away from their normal place for an extended period of time creates a stronger sense of team and accelerates the amount of learning that you can do for a given chunk of time. So we spent a couple of days in pretty intensive work with all of our administrators to help develop their ideas about how to make sure that students are being supported in their classes no matter who they are and where they're coming from and all that sort of thing. But also to really kind of dive into the data that we're seeing about everything from student performance to attendance to discipline, and how to pull all that together to make a better picture of the culture of their school so that they can work with their teams to improve that culture to support students. So it was all, as I said, paid for by the Title II funds, which is a federal funding stream. So it wasn't out of the general budget or anything like that. And it made a difference in both how we operate as a team and support student learning across the district. It helped us with our implementation of our new CKLA, which is our English language curriculum. And it's helping us set a strategic pathway to make a lot of the improvements that we know need to be made so that our test scores get better, but also our culture in the schools get better, and we're better able to support the variety of students who are coming to us.
I just, somehow I think that if it's that close, Holzberg is a drive away. I just, sorry, I don't agree
Okay.
with having a retreat that, I mean, that money could have been used to help the students, but I don't see how it's helping. I get team building. I team build all the time in my job, 8 hours a day.
And you deal with some hard people.
I
team-wise.
I deal with the school's failures, to be honest. And
Mhm.
we don't team build overnight. We go home.
Okay.
Speaking of academics, it's not a B course, but is this new program different than what's been in the past? How is it?
CKLA, and I'm trying to remember what the acronym stands for. Anyway, it really resets how we're teaching the fundamentals of how to read. And it's getting back to something that we did for a long time around phonics, right? Teaching really specifically how to formulate sounds and really specifically how each letter works and how to make the sounds for each letter and how all those things pull together to make sound blends and eventually into word. It's teaching the fundamentals of reading that most of us learned when we were in school. For about 20 years or so, the education system went kind of a different direction in this realm called balanced literacy. And we found out over the course of about 20 years that we saw performance go down, and especially as you went up in grades. So balanced literacy really helps with the really early learners, but then it kind of falls off and things get much worse. And we saw that across the country, that the performance and the ability of students to read and understand got worse and worse and worse and worse. Then we were better able to understand the reading process as brain scans got better, and we could actually see how neurons were created through explicit teaching around phonics. And so a reading program that had been used that's much more aligned with phonics is what this CKLA is based on. It's actual science that looks on how neurons are created in the brain by explicit teaching around phonics. There's not just phonics, but also about specific teaching about vocabulary, specific teaching about background knowledge. What I really like, one of the things I really like about CKLA is it's not just English language arts, not just about words and sentence formation and nouns, verbs, and all that sort of thing, but it also has content mixed into it. So it's like if you took social studies and English and mashed it up together so social studies provides the context around why you're learning these words and why you're learning all these, how to put sentences together.
Okay. Because I know that doesn't cover math in any way, right?
Correct. No, it's just English language arts and social studies.
What happened to like my daughters? I had one in senior, one in junior this year. My son is in 4th grade, so I'm like spread all over. But when they were in school, they were constantly bringing books home once a week to read. They were bringing sight words home to work on, homework every night, if not every other night. My son hasn't had homework in, I think, 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, once in a great while.
95%, 8% of the time it doesn't.
This is your
My son,
student?
yeah. But like, he doesn't they don't memorize, they don't work, or at least send stuff home to work on like that anymore. Is it
I don't know
a different
about
program, or?
So there's the research on homework is pretty clear that it doesn't really help learning very much. So that's part of it. But that doesn't mean that no homework ever. Most of the time, I was just in a classroom last week where, and this was a 4th grade classroom, where the teacher was saying, okay, these are the pages you're going to be taking home and the work that you need to do, and have your parents sign off after you read to them. So I know that there's some going home in some classes. I can't speak to every classroom every day, so I'm not sure about your specific instance. If you want, we can connect later and you can tell me what teacher, what classroom, and I can look further into that if you're interested.
Well, it's not really a particular teacher, because I know there's many of them doing it, because I have friends that have kids in lower grades and stuff. But I didn't know if it was like a different math program that youngsters were starting, but if the research with the homework, that makes sense.
And I don't want to draw it as a black and white kind of thing, but the idea of sending a student home with 50 math problems isn't necessarily productive in terms of them learning more math.
No.
I would think that would be very productive because it makes them think on their own.
And it doesn't. I hear you, and I get the intuitive sense.
Right.
In terms of how kids learn, it really doesn't.
Okay.
I know, I learn my multiplication tables by memorizing them, doing it
Yeah.
over and over. They don't do, my kid has to sit and think about multiplication when he does it. I'm sitting there thinking, it shouldn't be like that. That's the basis of math.
And I think we still have some work to do on some of the math fundamentals. And and we are, we're really focusing on the CKL, this English language, the English and language arts. We know that that is the key to everything, math and everything else. If you can't read and you don't feel comfortable reading, you're never going to be able to read any of the word problems or even the directions on a math problem. So we really want to focus in to make sure kids have a command of the language that we're expecting them to read.
I get that.
Is that more change because of people from outside areas coming in more? Is that kind of what? Or is this just?
No, the English language arts is because we were seeing the results.
Okay.
We were seeing the results that the kids weren't reading like we think they should read.
Right.
They were getting
They
to high
weren't.
school and they weren't able to read. And
Right.
so we figured, okay, if they're not able to read in high school, what did we do before that to put them in that position?
Right.
Oh, they're not able to read in middle school either. Oh my goodness, what are we doing in elementary school? And then we looked at the whole program, and this was right before I got here, but I was doing the same work in Washington. We realized that the whole program we were using completely missed the boat in terms of developing actual reading skills.
See, and this is nice, because if we would come to the school, you're busy, you have your stuff during the day, this don't work. And at board meetings, it obviously doesn't work.
Which is exactly why we're doing this, right? Because it's hard for us, you're working during the day, I'm working during the day, it's hard for us to kind of sit down and talk things out. So that's why we're setting this up, so we have time to talk things out.
How are all board members doing this, or just?
Yep, we're kind of working our way through. I won't be able to do this once a month because there's 9 of you all that I have to kind of
That's
work
what
through.
I wasn't sure, so I just called, because I didn't know if we would have any board works.
We did 2 of them in Region 1, simply because I got such a big area.
Yeah.
For people
Yeah,
to
both
drive
sides of the
down
mountain.
there,
I didn't realize you're over the charter school area. aren't you?
Yeah,
Now, is the board from our school separate from their school?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah.
Are libraries fully staffed, or do we have people that have to go? So you only have library like 2 days a week at this school and library 2 days a week at that school?
Yes. So we don't have full-time librarians. I wasn't here when that decision was made, but I've made similar decisions in other school districts where we look at the impact that it's having on student learning and had to really kind of focus in on, we want to make sure that we're getting more robust supports in the classroom that are there with the kids all the time rather than the occasional touch in the libraries. We do have librarians, but as you say, they're what we call itinerant.
And every school does have a library though.
Yes. Yep.
Well, what do you see as the biggest issues coming before us as a school district?
I think that what I was really excited about in coming to Keystone Central School District as the superintendent is most of that work of figuring out like what's really not going well was learned and kind of figured out, and a plan was put up and is enacted in the comprehensive plan to start the district moving forward. So it's about adopting a good CTLA program. It's about doing repeated work of looking at the curriculum and the effects of how students are doing and really using student data to determine what and how things are taught. Specific ways to improve communication. So I'm doing communication team meetings now to help improve that this kind of back and forth that we're doing with the community, or how the district puts out information. We're looking at the climate and culture in our schools in a very different way through our positive behavior interventions and supports programs that's happening in every school. So I think what was really exciting for me is there's so many things that are going on in the school district that are pushing us in the right direction. We're not there yet, but we're on the way. We've set it up so that as we move forward in time, we're going to see lots of things improving. You'll see test scores. There's something called the implementation dip. Whenever you start a new program, things get worse for a little while, but then they start accelerating. So you're going to see some great improvement in our reading ability for kids. And as a side note, I was just in a meeting today when we were talking to the elementary principals and looking at the data so far this year, our first year with this new curriculum. Typically in first grade, between the fall and the winter, you see a dip in some areas of performance and reading. We're actually seeing less of a dip, or in a couple of schools that actually they got better. So we're already seeing the effects of this new curriculum and being really specific about teaching phonics in classrooms. I think we have some challenges around facilities. I was just meeting with the mayor of Mill Hall earlier this evening and some of his team about how traffic is moving around Mill Hall Elementary and the middle school. I recognize, as does he, that there's some big problems with traffic in that area. So we're working together to try to figure out what are some reasonable solutions for getting kids and parents and buses all kind of moving around in the same place at the same time, so it doesn't take so long, it doesn't destroy the roads and all that sort of thing. We have some aging buildings that need a bunch of work, and budgets are tight, and facilities work and maintenance is typically the first thing to fall off of the budget. So I'm really excited that our new facilities manager has a really good head for preventative maintenance. So he and I are working pretty closely to try to use our what monies we do have as efficiently as possible, so we stop deferring maintenance and start building into the plan. So that's probably our biggest hurdle in terms of how district resources money is spent, is kind of getting a handle on setting up our facilities plan so that we're on the preventative, forward-thinking side rather than on the reactive side. Culture and student safety is always something that we'll be looking at, and I'm glad that you're on our safety and security team with your experience and involvement with other areas that, around the county with that. But we're looking at improving our safety and security around the schools. Some of the physical security things that are around the schools, I don't want to get too far into in public meeting because it's kind of a security thing, but we're looking pretty closely at that. Student safety and security is our priority. So I know that we're looking pretty hard at some of those things too.
When you talk about testing with this new curriculum, is the testing designed by the creators of the curriculum, or are you relying on what are those standard tests called?
So the state sets the tests, whether it be the PBOS test or the Keystones or whatever it is. So the state says, hey, here's the standards, and we're just going to create some tests about that. So school districts, you figure out what you need to do to hit these marks. So then we as school districts go out and look for a curriculum that matches up fairly well with what the curriculum is teaching and what the test is testing. There's no perfect alignment. My preference is that we teach a robust enough set of standards and curricula that it more than covers what the test is going to test, if that makes any sense. And we're still working towards that. Sometimes you'll see in data, and this is one of the things I was talking about to my administrative team about, is how do we look at the data to see, is this a problem of misalignment between what the test is, what we're teaching and what we're testing? And I think there's some of that in mathematics right now. Like our mathematics curriculum, I don't think is a perfect alignment with what kids are being tested on. So there's some work that we need to do there. But that's something that we're looking at pretty closely, is how well does what we're teaching align to what we're being expected the kids to know.
Phonics program. It seems, the way you describe it, seems like it's more aimed for kindergartners, first graders, kids that are just learning to read. How does it help your kids? Like, is this implemented to the whole, like the high school and everything?
It's a K through 6 curriculum, and then we have another one that's related that goes 6 through 8. So the early part of phonics is certainly a K1-2 sort of a thing, but you're still learning about multisyllabic words and more intricate versions of how sentences are corrected and how you, like, all of that stuff continues through middle school typically, and having a better command of the English language is something that's kind of stretches across that time. So there's a thing called Scarborough's Rope, which looks at a combination of phonics and vocabulary and content knowledge and how all of that weaves together to create English language learning. And so which part of that rope is emphasized does change over the course of time. Like you're saying, some of the really early phonics and formation of sounds happens early on, but there's still lots of work about how words are formed and exceptions and all that sort of thing through later years.
Or just the way you said it, just kind of.
Fair enough, yeah.
Did they start this program at the beginning of the year, or?
Yeah, at the beginning of the year.
So Chris, as a school board member, what do you feel are the biggest challenges?
Where do you start? There's big chances or big changes to do with budget. Safety and security was my priority. I'm back as chairman of the policy committee now, and we're working hard on not just updating some policies, but tightening them up a little bit. There's a lot going on. And just about everything we do, in all honesty, is a challenge because you can't please everybody. But in my eyes, I got on this school board for safety and security and for the taxpayers. Those were the things I ran on, and he'll tell you those are the things I fight about all the time. And I'm going to stick that route. Our students come first. They need to be safe. I'd like to work programs out to get them to come back to the school, but I understand if the school isn't safe, they're not going to come back. So we have made some changes. We're working on other things. To be fiscally responsible to the taxpayers, I'm one also. And I think that we can do better. I truly believe that we can do better, and we're looking at things constantly and trying to see what we can do. But the students need to learn all this language and all this stuff is great, but they also need to learn how to write out a check. They need to learn how to do some simple stuff at home to think before they react. But a lot of that is parent involvement also. We've got to get people involved, and for too many years, and it's sad because this country has became, both parents have to be working just to survive. And the kids kind of are the ones that I feel that got dropped off. And we got to change that mentality back around a little bit. The kids need to learn. They need to learn the stuff that they're going to use every single day too. It's just like, I can't say when the last time I used algebra was. I've used it, but very, very few. But when I was in school, that was huge. You had to have that.
Just like we never carried calculators in our pockets.
Yeah, we didn't have calculators back then. These were our calculators.
I used algebra more than I ever thought I would, but not lately, but one job.
Yeah.
Glad I knew a little bit, I guess.
I think you'd be surprised at how much you use algebraic thinking without using the algorithms of algebra.
Yeah.
As an old math teacher.
Is there a financial literacy course? Do we offer financial literacy?
Yep.
At what level?
High school.
As an elective or required?
The state is making it a requirement for all students to, let me think about that. I think the state is requiring that we offer it. I don't know if all students are required to take it, but it's, we have it woven in so that all of our students have it as part of, maybe not as a standalone course, but as part of the other things.
Yeah, I think it's over for the business class. Some daughters.
Does the school have a driver's training program?
No.
And I can see that. I didn't really need to ask the question, but I can see that because nobody can drive anymore.
I haven't seen a school district run a driver's ed program in probably 15 years.
Really? Kids don't know the laws.
No, they don't, or they're too scared to drive correctly.
They have a red light and they know it's okay to take a right on red. They forget the guy who has the green lights. Don't come at you, buddy. But you know, that was big back when I was a kid.
Sure.
Driver's training. You watch those horrible movies. You learn the laws. Nobody
It
knows
was like a
laws anymore.
6-month course or something.
It
It was
was-
like 6 and 6, I think.
I was gonna say it was quite a course, but
Yeah, it's been a long
You'll
time since
learn.
I've seen.
even if they're not out there on the roads driving, and I understand that taking a car out with a kid that's not yours is kind of hair raising.
Oh, yeah, I just.
But anyway, if they at least had that where the laws are brought into it, you know what I mean? I think we could improve some of those accidents that we're having.
Fatalities.
Yeah, and if we could teach the kids to put the phones down.
I wouldn't put that only in the laps of kids,
Yeah.
so to speak.
I know, but
That's parents and
They see what-
everybody.
if the parents would put the
involved.
phones down, it's funny.
What do you see?
Yeah.
You know, the state, you go in and you take the test, you pass it, you have your license.
Yeah.
It's up to the parents to teach those kids and work with them. And it's just like school, you know, you've got to work with your kid, just saying, hey, go get on the bus time, go to school, and when you come home, you don't ever see what they're doing or get involved with what they're doing. That's going to be a problem.
I didn't have that problem. My kid didn't go to school. They stayed at home with me.
But see, that's one of the benefits, I think, even homework, if it's a 10-minute thing that a child gets to express what they're learning in school, to me, that's worthwhile.
Right.
I
Even
didn't
though you say
realize-
it may not contribute, you may not enhance the learning, it's that dialogue with the parent. Hey, this is what I did today.
Yeah, so
I didn't
from my
realize they
perspective,
didn't take homework home.
well, and I don't think that's a universal thing. I think there's, depending on the grade level, I think high school is still doing a lot of homework. I think that parents of elementary students should read with their kids, either to or with their kids. The whole time I did it with my kids, I think it was a really big support for my kids as they were going through school, but also helped me, like you're saying. We talked about school, we talked about all kinds of stuff. It was a way for us to connect. I'd love to be able to assign homework to parents to say, hey, parents, your homework is to spend half an hour reading with your kids. It's a little outside of my control. I think it's really good for kids and families for them to spend time just reading.
Because inevitably it led to other things that were happening at school. I mean, that's what you found out, you know, Johnny's the one causing trouble at recess, or, you know what I mean? It was that connectivity that you were getting.
And then you can help them work through
Right.
without getting into big problems. Yep.
It's a daily learning experience for us included. You asked about us board members. If I'd have known then what I know now, Dawn was running against me for a little bit. She'd have had it instead of me having it.
Why? You're darn right over. If it wouldn't have been for you.
So.
But I wouldn't want to do it, but I would have done it.
Right. Well, I'm not complaining. I'm enjoying it. I love, even I get to work with the kids. And I enjoy the dickens out of it. I got kids at my church that I work with. I have kids at the school that I help out with their Special Olympics last year. And I had a blast. I had a blast. And I've been at a couple of the different events. And yeah, they know who I am.
You're gonna ask a question?
Yeah, do you know by chance if there's gonna be any changes to any bus routes? My son's gonna be going to middle school next year, and I'm not particularly fond of where his bus stop is, because I drive by there now and I take him to school in the morning, so I see what happens at that bus stop. I've seen cops at that bus stop in the morning. I've seen the school patrol, the enforcement officer, whatever, sitting there like, it's kind of scary. I'm like afraid my kid might get pushed out in the road or something.
Mm.
It's the bus that comes through Dunston, I don't know what the middle school
Right on
bus number is.
150 pretty much.
It runs the whole 150 down through Dunston. So I know there's one for the middle school and one for the high school, so I don't know the numbers.
Well, the middle school and high school does the busing is, in terms of, you know, the challenges that you mentioned, I think transportation is one that's continuing to be a challenge for us. A lot of it stems from not a whole lot of people want to drive buses. And so that really limits us on what we can do and how many routes we can run. We do our best to try to minimize ride times, but I know that there's parents out there and kids out there that are riding the bus way too long. If we had more drivers, it would be better, but it's That's one of the toughest jobs in education, quite honestly, is to drive a bus. I don't know about next year whether or not there will be different. I know that from last year to this year, there were some changes in routes and changes in pickup places and times and all that sort of thing. Every year, a couple of times a year, we look at the whole system. We look at who's doing pickups and how long the routes are and all that sort of thing. And every year there's some adjustments. So I can't say whether or not that part of the route will be adjusted. I just don't know enough about which students are coming from which houses and which drivers will have and all that sort of thing.
Well, there used to be two stops. There's one at the fire hall and one up by where the old beer place used to be, across from the dentist. And that was like pretty much perfect, but then now they moved them right in the middle, right at the bottom of Allegheny Street. There's nowhere for them to stand. They're standing in people's yards. I think they're doing stuff to their property, because I think it's where the cops are there. But it's just, it's in the middle of the intersection. It's not a very safe space.
Okay.
I mean, can we call transportation and bring it up, or?
Absolutely. Yeah, so you can always call the school line and ask for the transportation supervisor. Her name is Shelley Ott. And either she'll talk to you or Dina, who's her secretary, will take the information and relay, hey, there's a problem. We use Susquehanna Transit as our bus company. So we'll often relay the concerns to Cam, who's the director there. And they're pretty willing to kind of look at things and make adjustments. We've made a couple of shifts so far this year because of issues like the ones you're bringing up. So I would say, please call either the school district or you can call Susquehanna Transit directly and definitely take a look at it.
Now I have tried to contact them in the past for other things and have either never gotten a reply back or never gotten an answer. So if that happens, what do? Call you?
Yeah, send me.
Just make sure.
Yeah, email is the best way to get a hold of me because I'm in my office all the time. I'll always respond to emails.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'm just not happy. Property taxes going up again.
Me either.
Everything goes up except for my wages. Just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else, there's no obligation to stay if you don't want to stay or you don't have any things to talk
I'll
about.
just sit here and stare.
Like I said, we're here for the things that you want to talk about. We didn't have anything specific that we needed to get out or anything like that. There are a few other board members that will be working with their constituencies to try to set up meetings. And again, the intent is for generally for the folks who voted that board member in to give them a specific time. I'm sorry, I didn't hear about the time when
I
we were.
wasn't sure. I didn't know if this was just something Chris was doing. That's why
Yeah,
I
no,
thought it.
we're trying to get around to
Okay.
all of the areas, and we did have one at the Dunkstown Fire Company in December. I'm sorry.
I must have missed that.
Yeah, sorry that didn't get out because you're in Tracy's.
They're in Dunston.
I must have missed that.
You have a question?
There was a policy meeting today, but there was no Zoom link for it.
There's no what?
There was no Zoom link for it. You mentioned that there was a policy meeting, and
Yes.
I saw it. It was listed, but there was no Zoom link for it.
So the usual Zoom link for all of our committee meetings we have on the website board page. We use that as kind of a generic link that you could use for any of our meetings. I'm sorry that wasn't
For
specific.
any of them?
I believe
Or is it by section or?
Is it one Zoom link for everything?
Let me just.
I'd never noticed that.
Yeah, I think that's what we try to set it up to make it easier so those kind of things don't happen.
Okay.
I'll verify to make sure that's the case.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
I think it's one Zoom link covers any and
Yeah, I
all
think
meetings.
that's what we're trying to do, to set it up so that we wouldn't
No
run into this
idea.
kind of different link for every meeting kind of issue.
Okay. I'm surprised I didn't notice, but I
I may
didn't.
be wrong, but
That was the intent, to set it up like
That
that.
makes more sense. Because then you go find the other one.
To try to find ways that make it more difficult for the community to engage and get rid of those things and try to make it easier. Well, thank you all for coming today. It was good to see you. We're glad we had some folks show up.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much.
And if there's other questions that come up about anything, feel free to contact me. Like I said, email's the best way. I'll always respond to an email. It may take me a day or so to get back to you, but I'll definitely get back to you. And of course, your elected representative is an avenue. We have a board policy that says if anything goes to a board member, then the board member is supposed to send it to me. If it's a specific question about something that's going on in the district, then they'll send it to me and I'll either find the right person to talk to or find the right answer and get back to you with it.
Well, I'm not techie, so Chris hears from me.
Okay. All right.
I hate computers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yep, you as well.
Have a good night. Take care.
You too.